The hidden cave. It was the summer of 1879 in the arid canyons of the American Southwest. Miners and prospectors were endlessly chasing rumors of gold, silver, and other precious minerals, but few were looking for bones that might challenge the very history of humanity. Yet deep within a remote, sun-bleached canyon in what would later become Arizona, one such discovery lay hidden. A discovery that, according to some reports, would shake the foundations of archaeology. The story begins with a group of local cowboys and miners led by Tom Calder, a rugged man with sharp instincts and a curiosity that bordered on obsession. While chasing a stray herd of cattle, Tom stumbled across a narrow crevice hidden behind a natural rock wall, almost invisible to anyone unfamiliar with the landscape. At first, it seemed like just another cave, a shadowed shelter carved by centuries of wind and erosion. But inside, the air was heavy and cool, untouched by the desert sun. The walls were smooth, lined with ancient markings resembling primitive etchings. And then they saw the bones. The first skeleton was enormous, far larger than anything a normal human could be. Estimates suggested a height of 8 to 10 feet, with bones thick and massive, built to support immense weight. The skull was wide, with pronounced brow ridges, and the jaw hinted at teeth far larger than typical for Homo sapiens. Other remains follow wide, an entire burial site carefully arranged, as though the giants had been laid to rest with intention. Broken tools, large obsidian knives, and rudimentary weapons were scattered around, suggesting a society capable of construction, hunting, and perhaps even ritualized culture. The miners were awestruck. No one had expected to find bones of this scale. In the feverish expansion of the Old West, tales of giants, often circulated among settlers, dismissed as folklore or exaggeration. But here they were, bones so massive and so well preserved that even a skeptical scientist would have to reconsider centuries of accepted history. Word spread quickly, and soon researchers from nearby universities and even government officials were rumored to have visited the site. The cave, however, did not remain public for long. According to whispered accounts recorded in journals and letters decades later, the U.S. government intervened. Agents appeared, often under the guise of mapping surveys or mineral assessments, and the cave was sealed. Evidence was removed, transported in secrecy, and the miners who found it were warned not to speak. Many complied. Fear of authority in the remote frontier was enough to silence even the boldest voices. The story of the giant skeletons was buried, both literally and figuratively. Over the years, newspapers that reported unusual findings were discredited or disappeared entirely. Local legends told of the hidden giants. But serious discussion of the site vanished from scientific discourse. Only scattered journal entries, letters, and cryptic newspaper clippings hinted at the truth. An Old West cave had once contained evidence of humans far larger than any known population, and the government had suppressed it. Modern investigators began revisiting the tale in the late 20th century. Archaeologists, historians, and amateur researchers scoured archives for corroborating evidence. While definitive proof remained elusive, patterns emerged. Multiple accounts from independent sources described the cave as unusually deep, with multiple chambers, and lined with fossils not only of humans but of extinct megafauna. Mammoths, giant sloths, and other enormous creatures. The proximity of human remains and megafauna suggested coexistence and even adaptation to extreme environments. The first scientific hypothesis to gain traction was simple: the skeletons represented a previously unknown population of giants, possibly an archaic branch of Homo sapiens or a remnant of a pre-existing hominin species. Some suggested a Nephilim connection, rooted in biblical accounts of giants, though such interpretations are controversial and often dismissed by mainstream science. Still, the size, structure, and apparent culture implied a human-like intelligence capable of creating tools organizing burials, and adapting to harsh desert environments. Forensic analysis of the surviving journal descriptions, sketches, and recovered fragments revealed astonishing anatomical details. The femurs alone were nearly twice the length of average human femurs, indicating legs capable of immense stride and speed. The skulls displayed larger cranial capacity, hinting at possibly advanced cognitive abilities. Arms, hands, and even teeth suggested a species adapted to heavy physical labor, hunting large game, and possibly even performing sophisticated construction or crafting. Speculation continued: could these giants represent a separate human lineage, one forgotten or erased by climate change, disease, or conflict with smaller Homo sapiens populations? Or were they extreme examples of genetic variation, human mutations amplified by isolation in the desert canyons? Each theory carried implications that challenged the standard narrative of human evolution in North America. Yet the greatest mystery was not just the size of these beings, but the apparent intentional concealment of the discovery. Why would the government intervene in a remote desert cave, remove skeletal remains, and erase public records? Some theories suggest that early officials feared the political and social ramifications of proving that humans far larger than known populations had existed on American soil. Others speculate it was tied to resource claims, control over lands where such remains were found, and a desire to keep narratives aligned with the emerging, civilized West ideology. The suppression added a sinister undertone to the discovery. This was no mere archaeological curiosity, it became a story about truth, power, and hidden history. Those who had stumbled upon the cave were effectively silenced, leaving only fragmented evidence, sketches in fading journals, letters warning colleagues, and cryptic notes about the largest skeletons anyone had ever seen. Modern researchers attempting to verify these claims faced destroyed records, altered documents, and in some cases threats of legal action. Despite this, the legend endured. Amateur explorers, cryptozoologists, and fringe historians kept the story alive, returning to the cave site whenever possible. A few skeletal fragments were said to have been recovered over the years, kept in private collections or museums under strict embargo. Carbon dating of similar finds in other regions has hinted at human remains of extraordinary size, though none have been conclusively linked to the Old West cave. The cave itself remains an enigma. Maps from the 19th century provide clues, but modern development, mining, and natural erosion may have permanently altered the landscape. Yet, according to local oral histories, it is still out there, hidden, waiting, a silent witness to a chapter of human history deliberately erased. Forensic historians examining the case today approach it like a crime scene. Bones are evidence. Suppression is obstruction, and the mystery of the giant skeletons is a cold case spanning more than a century. By analyzing surviving documentation, the sketches, and cross-referencing eyewitness accounts, researchers are slowly reconstructing the site and its occupants. What emerges is a story of humans, or something like humans, capable of size, strength, and possibly intelligence far beyond what standard history acknowledges. Skeletons and secrets, the story of the Old West cave, became far more than a legend when researchers began to piece together the accounts of those who had actually seen the bones. Though most of the original miners and cowboys had long since passed, their journals, letters, and sketches survived, fragments of testimony that hinted at something extraordinary. Descriptions were consistent: skeletons of impossible size, some standing more than 8 feet tall, with bones thick as logs and skulls far larger than a modern human's. Yet the details that mattered most were not just their size, they were the clues embedded in their structure. From the limited sketches and records, anthropologists could reconstruct several anatomical features. The femurs were extraordinarily long, suggesting legs capable of great stride and speed. The pelvises were broad, hinting at a frame designed to support immense mass and muscle. Rib cages, described as barrel-like, were deep and wide, designed to hold larger lungs capable of extraordinary oxygen intake. Hands were long, strong, and dexterous, implying not only raw strength but fine motor control suitable for tool making and weapon handling. Every description painted a picture of a human, or human-like being, built to dominate the harsh desert environment. Perhaps the most compelling aspect was the skulls. Accounts emphasized large brow ridges, elongated jawlines, and wide cranial capacity, far surpassing the average for humans in that era or even today. One journal entry described the braincase as if a man could carry the knowledge of centuries within it. While the exaggeration might have been poetic, the recurring emphasis on size and intelligence in multiple independent accounts suggested these were not merely giant humans. They were a separate population with unique adaptations. Modern forensic techniques applied retroactively to the records suggested something chilling. The Old West cave might have been a ritual burial site, not just a natural resting place. The placement of the bodies in orderly rows, sometimes accompanied by large stone tools, hinted at intention. Some skeletons were positioned with extremities crossed or aligned, as though following symbolic or ceremonial conventions. The tools themselves, massive hammers, oversized knives, and obsidian blades, were functional yet ceremonial, suggesting that this population was technologically capable and culturally aware. However, all of this evidence had been systematically removed. According to surviving correspondence, the U.S. government, upon learning of the discovery, intervened to control access. Agents confiscated skeletons and artifacts, transporting them to undisclosed locations. Records were sealed, and anyone speaking publicly about the findings faced threats or social ostracism. Letters from scientists involved in the removal expressed frustration. One read, "We are no longer studying history, but obeying orders to erase it." This suppression raises uncomfortable questions. Why would a government hide the existence of prehistoric giants? Some historians theorize that acknowledging such a population would have challenged prevailing narratives about the origins of humanity in the Americas. Standard models emphasized migration from Siberia via the Bering Land Bridge, with humans arriving small, adaptable, and unremarkable. The existence of a population of gigantic, possibly intelligent humans would contradict this, suggesting an earlier, advanced lineage capable of surviving and thriving independently. Other theories suggest geopolitical motives. During the late 19th century, the U.S. government was consolidating control over vast territories in the West, claiming lands once inhabited by Native Americans. If evidence of a giant population had become public, it might have complicated land claims, challenged property rights, or fueled claims that humans had been on the continent far earlier than permitted by accepted history. Erasing the evidence ensured that the official story remained unchallenged. Researchers attempting to verify the claims today face additional complications. Natural erosion, mining, and urban development have altered the cave and surrounding terrain. The original location, known only through vague notes, is nearly impossible to pinpoint precisely. And while some skeletal fragments allegedly exist in private collections, access is tightly controlled and provenance is uncertain. Some fragments may have been lost entirely, yet forensic anthropologists can glean insights even from these fragments. Bone thickness, curvature, and density suggest a species adapted to extreme strength and endurance. The large rib cages noted in journals imply enhanced lung capacity, consistent with a population capable of long-distance travel in arid or high-altitude environments. Muscle attachment sites on femurs and humeri indicate substantial physical activity, hinting at hunting, construction, and survival behaviors far beyond typical human expectations. These features invite speculation about how this population fits into human evolution. Were they a subspecies of Homo sapiens, a surviving remnant of Neanderthals, or even an entirely distinct lineage previously unknown to science? Some researchers note parallels with myths and legends of giants in Native American traditions, raising the possibility that these stories reflect historical memories of a real population passed down orally across generations. One particularly fascinating aspect is the coexistence of these skeletons with megafauna. Contemporary accounts described bones of mammoths, giant sloths, and other extinct animals within the same cave system. This raises the possibility that these humans, or giants, interacted with now extinct species, hunting, scavenging, or cohabiting spaces with them. Such coexistence could have allowed for survival strategies not available to smaller, more fragile human populations, further emphasizing the uniqueness of these beings. The cave itself, while now inaccessible, offers tantalizing clues. Multiple chambers described in journals suggest the space was deliberately structured for habitation or ceremonial purposes. There are mentions of wall carvings and pigment markings, primitive art possibly signifying social hierarchy or spiritual practice. Together with the skeletal evidence, these descriptions suggest a population that was complex, organized, and culturally advanced, not merely anomalously large humans. What remains most chilling is the possibility that this population was systematically erased. Government intervention, suppression of records, and removal of skeletal evidence indicate a deliberate effort to conceal an entire branch of human history. It is as if an entire civilization, physically massive and potentially intelligent, had been hidden beneath the desert floor, leaving only whispers in historical journals. Anatomy of the giants, the story of the Old West cave had always hovered between legend and reality. But forensic reconstruction has a way of turning myth into tangible evidence. By combining the surviving sketches, journal descriptions, and a handful of alleged skeletal fragments, researchers in the 21st century began to piece together the anatomy of these long, forgotten giants. What emerged was nothing short of extraordinary. The femurs alone were staggering, nearly twice the length of the average adult human femur. Their robustness suggested enormous weight, bearing capacity, supporting individuals possibly weighing 400 to 500 pounds. Muscle attachment sites along the femur and tibia indicated enormous strength, hinting at powerful hunters and laborers capable of feats modern humans can barely imagine. They could sprint across rugged terrain, climb cliffs, or carry massive loads, making them apex survivors of their harsh desert and canyon environment. The rib cages, frequently described in journals as barrel-like, were equally remarkable. Anthropologists reconstructing these accounts suggested a thoracic cavity far wider and deeper than normal, capable of housing lungs significantly larger than modern humans, optimized for high-efficiency oxygen intake. In practical terms, these giants could have sustained long periods of physical exertion without fatigue, running, hunting, and performing laborious tasks with endurance far beyond the average human. Skulls were among the most compelling pieces of the puzzle. Accounts consistently mention pronounced brow ridges, robust jawlines, and enlarged cranial capacity, suggesting advanced cognitive function. Some interpretations propose that these giants had problem-solving abilities comparable to, or even exceeding, early Homo sapiens populations. Their teeth, described as large and sturdy, were capable of processing a diet that included tough meat, nuts, and fibrous vegetation, a diet that aligns with the surviving megafauna in the cave region. Hands and feet were equally extraordinary. Large, strong hands with elongated fingers indicated both dexterity and power, suitable for tool making and handling massive objects. Foot morphology, including wide soles and reinforced arches, suggested adaptation for walking across uneven rocky terrain. Together, these anatomical features painted a picture of a population that was not only physically dominant, but also highly adapted to its environment. But the giants' biology also raised evolutionary questions. Could they have been a subspecies of Homo sapiens, a remnant of Neanderthals, or an entirely distinct hominin lineage? Certain features, cranial morphology, robust limb bones, and ribcage structure, did not conform neatly to known human species. Some geneticists speculate that these skeletal features could reflect an archaic lineage that survived longer than previously thought, coexisting alongside modern humans without leaving widespread genetic traces. Their physical prowess was matched by environmental adaptation. The cave was situated in a desert canyon with extreme temperatures, scarce water, and rugged terrain. Such conditions require not only strength but also metabolic efficiency. The large ribcages and muscular builds suggest high oxygen consumption and energy storage, adaptations critical for survival in isolated and hostile environments. Combined with their massive size, these giants were likely apex predators and the dominant human-like presence in the region. Cultural implications emerged from the arrangement of skeletal remains and associated artifacts. The careful placement of bodies in the cave indicated deliberate burial practices, implying social organization and possibly ritual or spiritual beliefs. Large tools, likely designed for both hunting and ceremonial purposes, suggested technological ingenuity. Obsidian knives, hammers, and stone implements indicated a society capable of shaping its environment and manipulating materials with precision. Far from being primitive, these giants appear to have possessed both intelligence and culture, challenging traditional notions of prehistoric North American populations. The interplay between physicality and environment also raises questions about coexistence with other species. Fossilized remains of mammoths, giant sloths, and other extinct megafauna were reportedly found in the same cave system. The giants' anatomy suggests they could have hunted or scavenged these massive animals, possibly influencing the regional ecosystem and survival strategies. This interaction hints at a sophisticated understanding of their environment, from hunting techniques to resource management, further reinforcing the theory that they were highly capable, intelligent beings. Yet the story is not complete without considering the shadow of suppression. Government records indicate that the skeletons were removed under the guise of scientific study, but no public documentation was preserved. This deliberate obfuscation has fueled speculation about why such a population would be hidden from public knowledge. Was it fear of challenging accepted anthropological narratives, concerns over land rights, settlement claims, or even political control of historical interpretation? Whatever the reason, the suppression ensured that the giants' existence remained a secret, leaving modern researchers to reconstruct their anatomy and lifestyle from fragmented evidence. Forensic reconstruction today combines computer modeling, skeletal simulation, and comparative anatomy. Digital models of femurs, skulls, and ribcages allow scientists to estimate movement, breathing capacity, and physical endurance. Simulation suggests these giants could exert sustained physical effort far beyond that of modern humans. They could likely traverse difficult terrain at speed, manipulate heavy objects, and perform tasks requiring fine motor control while maintaining stamina. Their bodies were optimized for strength, endurance, and survival, perfectly adapted to a world that tested every facet of human capability. Perhaps the most chilling implication is the possibility of genetic legacy. While the physical remains were largely removed, there may be genetic echoes in modern populations. Tiny fragments of DNA could persist, hidden in descendants or mingled populations, influencing physiology subtly. Certain adaptations for size, strength, or metabolic efficiency might still exist in isolated lineages, waiting to be recognized. This opens the possibility that these giants were not entirely lost, biologically speaking. they may have left traces, like whispers in the human genome. The legacy they tried to erase. By the time modern science returned to the story of the Old West cave, it had become clear that the discovery was far more than a curiosity. It was a challenge to everything we thought we knew about human history. The giants found within that hidden canyon were not mythical creatures or exaggerations. They were real, meticulously documented by miners, prospectors, and early scientists. Yet their existence had been deliberately obscured, leaving only fragmented evidence and tantalizing whispers. Today, researchers are piecing together what that evidence reveals, and the implications are nothing short of revolutionary. The skeletal analysis, reconstructed from surviving fragments and detailed sketches, paints a picture of beings far larger, stronger, and more physically capable than any known modern human. Their rib cages, femurs, and skulls indicate a physiology optimized for survival in harsh, arid environments. The rib cages were enormous, capable of sustaining lungs much larger than ours, allowing for extraordinary oxygen intake and endurance. These giants could traverse vast distances, climb cliffs, and perform labor-intensive tasks without tiring. A level of physical capability modern humans can only approximate with training and conditioning. Skull reconstructions suggest enlarged cranial capacity, hinting at advanced cognitive abilities. Combined with the deliberate arrangement of bodies in burial chambers, these features imply a culture that was not merely functional, but socially and intellectually complex. The artifacts found alongside the skeletons, large obsidian knives, hammers, and tools of unknown purpose, point toward technological sophistication previously unimagined for the period. These were not just giants. They were intelligent, adaptive, and organized, possibly possessing symbolic or ritualistic traditions. Yet what makes this story darker is the deliberate suppression. Historical accounts suggest that government agents removed skeletons and artifacts, often under secrecy, preventing public access or scientific scrutiny. Letters and journal entries from those involved hint at the motivations behind the erasure: fear of disrupting accepted historical narratives, controlling settlement claims, and maintaining authority over the interpretation of American prehistory. The giants were effectively erased from official records, as though their existence was too dangerous for the public to know. Modern researchers must reconstruct their legacy from traces, fragmentary bones, eyewitness accounts, and indirect evidence of their culture. Through forensic modeling, we can simulate their movement, strength, and respiratory efficiency. Digital reconstructions reveal that they could carry enormous loads, sprint across uneven terrain, and manipulate massive tools with both precision and power. The giant's anatomy represents a lost evolutionary experiment,